Hello everyone, this is TJ Thorne here, and I thought I would do a quick video tutorial on how to enhance Sunstars. I have here an image that I've been working on titled Stardust. It is a long focal length shot of sunlight on water, and I used a short shutter speed to freeze the water and a very small aperture, I think it was f38, to get the sunlight to burst where it was hitting the water. I love this composition. This is actually one of my favorite recent photos. I have not released it yet. I've been doing a lot of this stuff, and I got a lot of action going on. I got a lot of sun stars over here, but I'm feeling a little empty up here. So what I want to do is I want to emphasize this sun star so that it carries a little bit more weight and fills out this area. You can see when we zoom in that there is a sun star there. It's just not very well defined, or at least as defined as the ones around it. So let's take a look at these sun stars next to it and see how they're structured. You can see we have a lot of blown out white in the middle, surrounded by a glow of color before it disappears into the sunburst effect, with the spires kind of falling off into nothing. So that's what we want to go for. We have a little bit of glow going on over here, but I think we can emphasize a little bit more and make it a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's switch over to our brush and create a blank layer. So let's go to Layer, New Layer, and we just want it to be blank in normal blend mode. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And now what we want to do is we want to sample these colors here, and the easiest way to do that is to come over to our foreground and background colors and click on it. And you can see that we now have an eyedropper, and we can pick our sample size. We can do a 3x3 pixel average, 5x5, 11x11, and onward. And we want to kind of narrow in on that color. So let's do a 3x3 average, and come down here to where there's a lot of that color, and we're just going to click on it. You can see it gave us a brightness of 80, a saturation of 25, and a hue of 27. We want this to be bright, so let's go ahead and just fill that out to 100% brightness and hit OK. And now what we want to do is make our brush size about the size of that star. We want to make sure that we are at 0% hardness, and I'm using my brackets here to make this my brush larger and smaller. And let's go about right there. And if we hit our caps lock button, it changes into crosshairs, and we can make sure that we're directly in the middle of that. Hit caps lock again to go back to the brush, and we're just going to click once. There we go. And you can see that the color it's pretty close. I'm not sure if you can see in the video, but I think it could handle a little bit more saturation, so we're going to undo that. Let's come back over to our color picker here, and let's just change the saturation to 30%. You can do this as long as you like. This is an awesome way to really get colors accurate, and we'll do that with the spires as well. We'll be able to hone in on the exact color that we want. So let's go back to caps lock to get those crosshairs, make sure we're in the middle, and click once. And I think that's a lot closer to what we're looking at. But since we were in normal mode, we kind of painted over that middle. So we can either erase it on the layer, or we can just come over here and change it to 0% saturation to get white. Make our brush a little bit smaller. And we're just going to paint that white into the middle of the sun star so we can get that blowout back. About like that. That might be a little much, so let's undo that. Make our brush a little bit smaller. And try again. I'm kind of trying to keep with the shape that it already had. So there we go. And you can see that's pretty close, and especially if we zoom out, you can see that as we turn this on and off, it's not exaggerated very much. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to bring these spires out. But before we do that, let's rename this layer. So this is the sun glow, and let's go back into our colors. I like to note the color that I use, and for some reason I go bottom to top. So I use 100% brightness, 30% saturation, 27-degree hue. So let's go ahead and throw that on there just in case we ever want to reference it or change it or anything. So 100% brightness, 30% saturation, and 27-degree hue. So if we look at our sunburst, my lens gives off 18 spires. So what we want to do is we want to use our line tool to draw kind of a map for us to follow when we start building these spires out a little bit more. So let's go ahead and pick our line tool. And you can see that right here is kind of our most prominent spires. So we're going to use that as our very first guide. And we're just going to kind of follow that out here. And we're going to click and drag. And we're going to match our line up with that spire where it comes out on the other side, go directly through the middle of the star. And we're going to let go and hit enter. And I did the math. It was I can't just cut this cut that in half and then cut that in half. That only gives me 16. So what I need to do is cut this into thirds. So we're going to find the approximate third here, which is about right here, because we got 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, so maybe right about here. And we're going to do the same thing. Go right through the middle of that star. Let go. And then do it again on the third. Right through the middle of the star. You want to make sure that it's always going through the middle. Let go. And now we need to cut each of these quadrants, or not quadrant because it's not in fours, but you know what I mean. We need to cut each of these into two. So we're going to pick about a third of the way there, come across, and then between those guys, come across directly through the middle. And then same thing for each section. Just keep coming through the middle each time. And when I'm done with this, we're going to have 18 spires that we're going to follow to build out the rest of it. There we go. And one more. All right, so now you can see if we start here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we got 18, and let's put those all in a group. So I'm going to select the top one, hold shift down, click on the bottom one, and just hit Command G or Control G. And we'll just call this the map. And now what we want to do is create another blank layer. So let's go to Layer, New Layer. And we're going to fill that with that same color that we used before. And this might take a little bit of playing around for us to get it accurate, but let's just fill it to kind of get an idea of what we're doing. So we're going to hit 100% brightness, 30% saturation, 27-degree hue, hit OK. And now I can either use my paint bucket tool, or if I hit Option or Alt Delete while I'm on this layer, it is going to fill this entire layer with my foreground color. There we go. And now let's put a black mask on that. So if I hold Alt or Option down and click on my mask button, it'll give me a black mask to hide it all. There we go. So now what we want to do is we want to draw our spires in here over each single one. And the easiest way to do that is to use our polygon lasso tool. So let's come up here to our lasso tool, click on it. We have lasso, polygonal lasso, and magnetic lasso. So make sure we're selected on polygonal. And then we're just going to kind of draw a little wedge over each one of these. I'm going to switch over to my finger here instead of my pen because it's a little bit more accurate for these things. So I'm always going to start in the middle, and I'm going to click and drag up. And this doesn't need to be perfect, but you want to get them as even as you can, and go up pretty far. So maybe come right about there, come over, and then come back in. And you want to make sure that your guide line is approximately centered in the middle of your spire. Click one more time, and you can see we have this lasso going on. And now we want to fill this with white. So the same thing as before, white is my foreground color because I'm on a mask. If I hit Option or Alt and then Delete, it's going to fill that with white and let that color show through. There we go. And Command D to deselect. And we're going to do the same thing for each of these spires. And sometimes, like, let's say if you come over here, it doesn't know that you're connecting, so you might have to double click. And then it gives you your selection. But you can see that that's not centered. I just did that as an example. But sometimes you might have to double click if it doesn't just automatically connect itself. So it's Command D to deselect, start in the middle, come on up, come over to the right, and back down. Option or Alt Delete to fill with white, and Command D to deselect. And just keep going. Hit escape, that one wasn't lining up very well. This technique also works really well for sun rays and anything that kind of has this effect. There we go. The further out you go, the more to the side you're going to have to come. So I think that's what's throwing me off as I keep going a little further and further out. Let's speed this up here so you don't have to watch me do the rest of them. Alright, and done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video. Oh, I'm just kidding. So now what we want to do is soften these up. So what we're going to do is we are going to turn off our map, just so it doesn't start to show up underneath. Actually, we don't even need that anymore, so let's delete that. And now, on our mask here, we're going to right click and go to Select and Mask. And we're going to use the feathering tool to soften the edges of the mask up. So let's just start to drag this up a little bit until we soften the edges. It's still not going to look quite right, but we just want to soften them up so they're not as straight and harsh as they were. We still want them pretty defined. We don't want them to be super soft like that, especially around the middle of the star. We still want there to be some definition. So we're just going to try to land it in an area where they're soft, but we still have the definition of the spires in the middle. So maybe right about there. And let's go ahead and hit OK. And now what we want to do is we want to put this in a group, because we can put a mask on the group and blend and bring this Sunstar in exactly where we want. So we're just clicked on one layer here, and we're going to hit Command or Control G. You can also come up to Layer, Group Layers right there. And then the same thing as before, we're going to come down to our mask button, and we're going to hold Alt or Option down and click on that guy, and it's going to hide all that work that we did. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use white to reveal all that stuff that we did. So we want to make sure that we have white as our foreground color. We're going to go to our brush, and we're going to hit our caps lock key to give us the crosshairs, go right in the middle of our star. And we want to use a size, we don't want to go too big, that's obviously huge. Let's undo that. But we want to pick a size that will be a lot like the other stars here. So let's maybe start off right about there. Let's go ahead and click once. There we go. And now what we can do is adjust to taste with opacity. So let's bring that opacity down until it matches the surrounding Sunstars. Maybe right about there. And that might be a little bit too big. So we can actually fill this layer with black again. And since black is our background color, we can hit Command or Control Delete while we're on that mask, and it will fill it with black. And we can do the same thing with a smaller size brush. So right in the middle of our star, a little bit smaller, one click, there we go. That's a little bit more applicable. And let's call this Sunstar. And now we did paint over that whiteness that we did there, so we want to not have that be white. So let's just switch our foreground color with black by hitting the letter X, and then come in with our brush while we are clicked on this layer and just let that white come back through. So on this mask, I'm going to paint black over the middle of the star to hide that color that covered up the white. There we go. And that's pretty close. If we were way off on our color, we can just come down here. Since we already did all of this work, if we wanted to switch colors, we don't need to redo all of it. We can just come in here, click on that, switch back to our foreground color, click on that, and we can change this to anything we want. So let's, for example's sake, let's just do a green Sunstar. So I have my foreground color loaded as this green, and I can hit Alt or Option and delete, and it changes the Sunstar to that color. So that's just an easy way to hone in on the exact color that you want. Luckily, I kind of nailed it this first time. But when I did this in my original file, I had to keep playing with the saturation and the hue to get it to match perfectly. So that's it. That's how we can help this composition out by adding in a little bit of a Sunstar. We can continue to refine it, maybe making it less noticeable, but it just fills in that little area there. You can learn more techniques like this in my tutorial videos at tjthornphotography.com. And if you have any questions about this video, feel free to reach out or leave a comment on the YouTube link. Thanks for checking it out. Have a killer day.